Welcome, everybody. It's our privilege to have Ferne Van Zyl this evening. Welcome, Ferne. Thanks for coming this evening. So let's start with what is your Montessori story? How did you discover Montessori?
Well, actually, I was introduced to the word before I got to Australia because there was a little Montessori school that was run in a house just down the street from a suburb that we were last in before we left Australia. And I was fascinated because there was the kids without uniforms and the long hair and the that writing, so, and my kids have all were in the local, traditional school. And then a close friend that I'd also made had a little boy in a Montessori preschool, also in the suburb. But I remember looking up the word and it said, oh, Maria Montessori had her base in Eastern religions or some false, she lived in India and I think whatever, first it was before the internet, so I don't know what. And so I kind of like shelved it because I was, I thought, oh, that goes a bit against my belief system or whatever, without really doing any further research. And I was a busy mom. I had I think I was fostering 2 children at the time. So I had 5 children under 9, I was just hectic at the time. And then when I got to Australia, my sister-in-law in 99, my sister-in-law's little daughter was at Tineke Van Gusselt's Down Under 3. Or she had just left and gone to 3 to 6, and her second one was about to go to the sessions. And my sister-in-law said to me one day when I said, oh, I need to find something to do. My youngest is going to school now. I can actually join the workforce maybe, because I'd been a stay-at-home mum. And she said, oh, Fern, you've always loved babies. Why don't you come and observe the session at Castle Crag at Down Under 3 in Sydney? And I went, and I think my first thought was, little children are even more capable than I've always thought they are. And in a place where they can have things exactly the right size, they can achieve so much. And so, yeah. And I think I went home and said, I think I've found what I want to do, to my husband. And so I went again, and Tineke at the time was looking for a way to actually get out of the classroom. And she said, oh, I'll sponsor you. I think there's I'll give you some sponsorship. There's a course in America. And I went home to my husband. I said, oh, I just have to go and live in America for a bit to do this course. And then Julia's course came up, of course. A few months later, Julia had organized for Sylvia Carboni Singh to come out to Australia. So I did the pioneering course. And with 9 people from Sydney and 9 people, and which is why I was introduced to the Gold Coast. Otherwise, I would have never really known the Gold Coast. And because I came and lived here 11 weeks and 8 weeks, I fell in love with the Gold Coast. And here I've ended up following children up to the Gold Coast. So yeah.
Wow.
It was like a sliding door day of my life because I'd always been a stay-at-home mum.
So what did you do after the training?
Tineke, after the first year, I actually bought the school from Tineke. So by the time I finished my training, I'd started my own business as well. So I'd worked, she actually let me work to pay off the business. So when I qualified, I actually spent the first year running the school and paying her every month for the school over the next yeah.
Wow.
And at that point, there were 100 kids on the wait list because it was one of the few zero toddler programs in Sydney. Yeah. So think
So
Susan came there.
yeah, what have you most loved about being a Montessori educator?
I
Do you have
think
some cherished memories from those early years?
the earliest, I think the transformation of little children, offering children activities that they did over and over again, and the joy of accomplishment on the adult not being involved in the children's activity of, and being able to put, I suppose, the theory that I had learned over the 2 years. I loved the observations were my favorite part of the course. And I managed, because I was linked to Tineke, I managed to find families that would let me come every week to do my observations. So I watched a few children over a lot of months instead of lots of different children. I watched one child from birth to 1. I watched another child from 4 months till they went through all their milestones. And I would arrive at the most challenging time of the day. I would offer, I'll come on your most challenging day to do my observations at your house, because they had other children. So I managed to, just become part of the family and really put the principles into practice in people's homes as well as in the classroom. And because I was working with parents in the classroom, I was on a huge learning curve. I found that my communication skills needed a lot of work, because I needed to get 9 adults to work with me in the classroom as well as the children. So that's where I was introduced to the Faber. My husband actually bought the Faber and Maslish series of books, Liberated Parents, Liberated Children, and How to Talk So Your Children Will Listen, at the airport when we left Africa, maybe because we had 4 growing children and we were like, trying to tread water growing up these 4 children. And so I thought, okay, I mentioned it to my sister-in-law, and she had bought the course but had never used it. So I started implementing it at my school, and then started running my workshops for my parents, because I thought if I could get the 9 parents to talk the same as me in the classroom, I'll have much more success.
Yeah. Can you describe how your school worked for those not familiar with this age group?
Okay, so initially there was only toddler classes. That was anything from as soon as they were steady on their feet, so 16, 17 months, and could carry things, till their 3rd birthday. Children were enrolled in 1 session a week for 2 hours. So if they came on Mondays, they came every Monday. If they came on Tuesday, every Tuesday. So I think we had, when I took it over, there were 6 sessions, every morning and a Saturday morning. And Tineke used to take the Saturday morning initially because I had 4 children. I didn't want to work weekends, so I found other people to do the Saturdays. I ran them by the normal school term, or a week less. So I had time to settle my children into school and then run an 8 or 9 week term. So I ran a 36-week year only, and according to the terms in Sydney, and I could do that because I wasn't the main earner in my family. And secondly, the St. James Church only made me pay rent for the weeks I used, even though my classroom was set up for the whole year, that I only paid. So it was a very unique situation that I was able to run my family and run a small business on the side that was a pocket money business more than It meant that I had a huge training ground because it was at my pace, and
Did you have parents wanting to have their children in 5 days or more than 1 day a week?
I suppose I was a firm believer that children should be, especially in the first 2 years, with parents. It was kind of part of my ethos and whatever. So many of the children that came to Down Under 3 maybe were in childcare 2 days a week, and the parent on their day off work was bringing them to Montessori. So I had a group of parents that were professional. I mean, most of the parents, just because of Castle Crag, the area that it is, were professionals. The majority of the parents were, you know, two-income family professionals, and either the dad or the mom took off a day a week to do activities with their child. And so Montessori was the chosen thing that, you know, those, and there was a 3 to 6 school on the same property. So that was a big feeder for my, you know, had always been a big feeder for both, because you had to walk past my door to go downstairs to the preschool. So when people were registering for the 3 to 6, I used to like, oh, have you thought of 0 to 3? And yeah, so it was there is, the saddest thing was that when I finished and there was nothing running in that room. I know the year I finished, I counted that there was probably 75% of the intake in the 3 to 6 came through my doors in the 3 to 6 on. So, you know, I think every 3 to 6 should have a 0 to 3 link to it. I, you know, laying the foundation for preparing children for preschool. The toddler program is amazing. I did start to unofficially have a 2-day program where kids came 2 days a week, and they came without their parents. Their parents were strongly encouraged to go and have coffee at the local. So I started with them observing first and sitting back in the classroom. They weren't allowed to touch their child. They had to sit around the room on a red stool. You know, there were different kinds of stools. So I trialed a lot of things to get the parents to sit back from their children and to really watch what autonomy and independence looks like at that stage. I have so many highlights of seeing children that, you know, children that had been told they couldn't walk even. I got a child to crawl that had been told for 2 years that she was never going to crawl or walk. I had a little boy who had never been diagnosed, but I think through working with him, he had something like dyspraxia, you know, where his sensory world just wasn't linked to his motor world at all. And his mum, he stayed with me till he was 4 because he wasn't speaking yet, but we got him to, using Montessori principles, we got him to do so many things that they said he would never do. So I just got to working with parents. Well, I stepped out of the classroom just because I wanted to influence parents more in their home environment with Montessori principles. So, you know, I think I've seen the best of both worlds by working with under 3s in a classroom, and also being privileged to go into parents' homes and really make a huge difference to the way they implement. I think Montessori is quite misunderstood by parents. The principles, the foundational principles, and when they see it in action, they are sold. And you make a difference in their home environment. Yeah, but I suppose you turn the parents into Montessori disciples. I don't know. It's the biggest change that I've seen.
Yeah. So parents had to be there at the school, but they were only to watch.
Yeah, that's what I aimed for. So as soon as they came, the challenge was to stay on a stool for 15 minutes and observe language or observe movement, or, you know, because the aim was working independently, I kind of followed what we had to do as educators in our training, which was sit on our hands, keep, you know, wait till your child asks for help. You know, so because I had only 9 children in the classroom, and 9 adults, but the adults were the biggest challenge. The children were not a challenge at all. It was 9 adults who had different parenting styles, but most adults try to solve children's problems before they even have them. So the biggest challenge was just demonstrating to them the power of the principles. And then when they got their light bulb moment, that was it. My work was done.
So it sounds like parents were the biggest challenge.
Parents are definitely, I think educators are the biggest challenge in the classroom, and parents are the biggest challenge. I've just got to observe for a parent in Brisbane Montessori. I just see us as adults, what does autonomy look like when, especially as a parent, you're there to solve your children's problem. We see love as making it easy for our children. And so to change our mindset that parenting requires us to do less, to say less, to interfere less, to go a lot instead of, I know what you can do, if you just do this. So
why do you think that is for adults so hard to let go? Do you think it's because it's hard to watch children struggle? Or is it
I mean, autonomy means instead of independence, I talk about autonomy, because autonomy means self-regulated, inner-directed behavior. So the only way that can occur is for the adult to wait longer, say less, do less, wait out the decision-making of a child. And I think because I've worked mostly since I've stepped out of the classroom, which is now since 2016, and worked mostly with parents or in education centers to assist with challenging behavior, that is the biggest thing. The adults are generally, it's the dynamic of what the adult's role is. That's the biggest problem. Because Maria Montessori said that the adult who knows how to help, a child will develop naturally in an environment that is set up for them appropriately with an adult that knows how to help. So my work is with, it's a dynamic between adult-child environment, and the schools I go to, the parents I speak to, mostly we're looking at, my child's behavior, or what activities can I give my child that they'll be interested in, but they're not taking into account the biggest obstacle, which is the adult mindset. So the more and more every day I'm speaking to parents about, let's step back. You've come here because she's got not going to the toilet, or she's not sleeping, or she's not eating, or you can't get the strap on her in the car seat or whatever. But how much autonomy are you giving your child at home? What are your beliefs about children doing things for themselves?
How are you getting in the way?
How are you getting in the way? And I give them a 72-hour challenge. That's my latest consulting tool.
How does that work?
The 72-hour challenge to handle the situation totally differently and see if you get a different result, and you generally do. So the behaviors change.
What guidance do you give them for the 72-hour challenge? How does it work?
Less equals more. So say less, do less, and change your tone to emphatic. I mean, one of the biggest things is that parents plead with their children, please, can you do it? Or, and then they'll explain 1,000 times why it needs to be done, instead of bathroom now.
Yeah.
So they're not convinced that the children are going to listen, so they don't.
Mm.
Yeah.
Ferne, can you talk about the business that you set up after leaving the classroom?
Okay, yeah. So in the classroom, I developed a couple of workshops. Well, I developed the toileting workshop and the How to Talk series. So I started running those courses for the parents in my school. And then, of course, they were inviting people. That's how my school got filled in the end, is by the workshops that I ran. People came to my toileting workshop and they saw a Montessori classroom and said, what is this kind of education that's so practical? And so the workshops with my own parents, and then I basically I had done home consults to get enrollment. So when children got enrolled, I offered an hour's home consult or an hour in the classroom with the parents on their own with their child. And that's how I got parents on board before they even, if I did an interview with 1 hour with the child and the parent, I found that I springboarded a whole term of work by the parent and child coming into the classroom without that. Because the parent knew I was on their side. I was on their side, and we were going to work together with the child to develop. We weren't in competition. I was going to love them to change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a very a tricky line to walk. I mean, you're really telling the parent, back off from your child, but you're also doing it in a way that doesn't alienate them.
Yeah. I used to have this thing, I would just put my hand on their shoulder and say, oh, wait, let's see. Oh, wait, let's see. I think I did it with humor, and I did it with I think I got quite a bit of criticism from Montessorians for the way I did things, I think. Initially from AMI, I wasn't quiet. I was quite confronting, I'd say, he can pick that up. I would say it. I would say the things that, and then I'd just say, let's just wait till he's finished the activity and you'll see he'll pick it up. Or, I'd lead them by the hand to the other side of the classroom.
Why did you get criticism for that?
I think because it wasn't part of the training. The training was be very gentle. I think when you've got parents in the room, it was a very different expression of everything, because you couldn't do a whole presentation. So our training was do a whole presentation, then give the child a turn, then whatever. But what I noticed when you've got 9 children and 9 adults as a distraction in the class, hand washing was, wet your hands, and then you'd let the child wet their hands, and then so you broke it down into much smaller, palatable expression for the untrained adults, I think. And in some ways, it didn't look like pure Montessori, I suppose.
Yeah. But you were adapting Montessori to.
I was adapting it to the circumstance, but it also got a lot of results. It got parents doing Montessori at home, which was my goal, because they were coming for 2 hours. That wasn't going to impact a child's life. I wanted them to do Montessori, take on that. Because one of the things that parents said to me a lot, I won't get him a 2-step stool at home. It's too dangerous. So that was one of the things. We're coming here for a Montessori independence experience. So the idea of taking them out of a cot. I mean, I go to so many homes, and you should see the Montessori parents' homes, and the protective elements in the homes would make your eyes go like that.
Yeah.
You know, I've been where there's bubble wrap around dining room tables and 3 gates cornering off the couches so that the television buttons can't be pressed. And usually I started taking my screwdrivers and, you know, dismantling cots. And so in a 3-hour consult, I'd stay for dinner so they could go to bed in their new mattress.
So you were observing and experimenting to see what worked and then adapting the method to what worked. Isn't that what Dr. Montessori did?
Well, that's what I believe. You know, that's what my husband encouraged me with, is that, you know, you are actually doing what Maria Montessori said, is that you're making it. The principles are so powerful. And I think because I did it initially around toileting, which was a very practical need of the parents to resolve, and they were very fearful. Parents are incredibly fearful of doing toilet training. That's what my main discovery has been, because of the masses of conflicting information that there is. And because they've never really had to deal with the mess because of disposable nappies. Those 2 things combined, the too much information and I suppose the break of the link to the generation before, because of the older parenting, you know, they don't want to do what their parents did. Or it's too long ago. And so, yeah, it's an amazing, my book will eventually get written, I think.
So what are the principles that you see as fundamental? How does your toilet training work using those principles?
I suppose the main, what I call the dynamic triangle, is the base of all the parenting, mentoring and staff mentoring I do, is that we are the link between the child and the environment. So everything has to start with us. And if it's not working what we're doing, we've got to do something different. We can't just, I think traditionally, and now with the education system and the way that funding works at schools, you know, if you don't get a diagnosis, you can't get extra, you know, so it's all about the child and the child's problems, and how can we can't circumvent that. We, the adult, are in the classroom, and if there's a behavioral issue, we are a third of the problem, at least. You know, and I think if we can stand back and do that, it will change. I just haven't come across a child's behavior problem that doesn't get resolved with the adults changing the way they handle the problem.
How do most parents get in the way of toilet training?
The biggest problem is they delay it. They don't look for the signs that, well, they all remember that their child was interested at about 18 months, and they all go, it didn't work in 3 days, so we left it until 2.5 or 3, or so many of them, it's too convenient. It's too convenient not to follow the child's development. So convenience, the mess of it, they have fear that it will go badly before they've even tried. They expect it to go badly. Or they think that children, the whole readiness thing, the list of readiness signs is very long now. I think that parents get told, like, they have to be able to communicate. Yeah. Well, in my experience, children can do toileting a lot. Toileting is a lot easier before they can speak, for instance.
Yeah.
So
I guess modern nappies really mask the readiness signs.
Yes, yeah. And the parents aren't ready. So my big thing is to change that. parents are, oh, when are they ready? Today you can do something differently that makes that development happen easier, whether they're 9 months, because 14-month-olds hate lying down, but parents are lying them, I go to people's homes, they're still changing their 3.5-year-old at Montessori, changing them on a change table because it's more easy for them to do it. So yeah, I just say, I go, will you not talk to your child for the first 2 years and they'll have language at 2? They say, of course not. I said, well, you can't not do anything about toileting and expect them to do it in 3 days. So yeah, it's the biggest hindrance. I think it's impacting 3 to 6 environments a lot. If I go, there's children in nappies after school, 4 and 5-year-olds.
Wow. What do you think? Can you think of, if there was one book that you think a parent should read before the first child is born to prepare them for being a parent, what would you say?
Man, I probably haven't done as wide enough reading that I should, but I have always called this book a parenting Bible. Your Guide to Liberated Parents, Liberated Children. I think it's very in line with Montessori principles in terms of the uniqueness of every child. That communication is key. We can believe what we want, but we have to be able to communicate Montessori principles in a way that practically works. And so, if you can't relay the principles to parents, we need to learn how to do Montessori in lay terms. And yeah, so, and the freedom and limits is the biggest, I suppose, foundational principle of Montessori that most parents have somehow, it's been lost in translation. We must give children freedom, but they don't understand that with every freedom, there has to be a set of guidelines and rules and responsibilities that the children have to, that they both, I think having the privilege of math being asking me to go and talk around the country on freedom and limits, supporting freedom and limits in the under 3 child was the biggest learning curve, because I had to research more, because we only had a 4-page lecture on freedom and limits. And so I had my experience in the classroom. I suppose I had my own model of praise, reward, and punishment, of the traditional way of bringing up children, which didn't fit in with it. I think all the things that I'd been exposed to and came to Australia, in Africa, children are still beaten at schools, So I came to a country away from my culture that did things very differently. I had to think out the box. I had to educate myself on different ways of doing things. And and Montessori's principles, just invite you to do that learning as well, to understand the foundation of freedom and limits. And for me, the crux of freedom and limits, but you have to be able to communicate with children, so you have to be able to communicate with each other as educators in the classroom and get on the same page. I think that's one of the biggest problems in the classroom, is that the adults aren't on the same page about how they do things and how they set limits. And because we've all got faulty models growing up.
Yeah, I think you've got a really strong point there, that I think Montessori, we tend not to do parent education very well. We teach parents about the materials, and we think that they will somehow extract the principles of Montessori and figure out how to do shopping with their children without the begging, or how to help their child who's in a puddle on the floor having a tantrum, but they don't. And Faber and Maslish are really good about that, communicating kind and firm at the same time. Jane Nelson also with positive discipline.
Yeah, I was going to say the two, that's the next course I'm doing. But
yeah, I think we need programs like that to extend Montessori into the home. We can't just teach parents about the stamp game and think that they're going to somehow figure out how to use Montessori at home through understanding the materials.
No, and I mean, I think the 0 to 3 is where you're wanting to lay that understanding. I mean, we have a lot of work to do still. I get surprised every day that when I say, oh, I'm a Montessori birth to 3, they say, what's that? I mean, people in the general public know very little about but when I describe the principles, they go, wow, that makes so much sense. Every parent I say they say that, you know, you leave the Montessori word out and just speak about the dynamic between child, adult, and environment. And in every place we are, those 3 things exist. I mean, with little children, you can't ever divorce the one from the other. You know, the one impacts the other. Whatever the parent's doing or saying is going to impact the child's learning. So, yeah.
What do you think are some desirable skills and talents for educators who work with this age group, birth to 3?
I think the passion, unless you're really passionate, I think passion is the first ingredient to being a successful educator. And don't work with a 0 to 3 child if you really don't get them. You know, work with an age group that you really get and that you're really inspired by. I mean, I have been around little children. I mean, I got to look after some twins when I was 9 on an overseas trip with my parents, and then my mum had a little child when I was 10 and 11. So I had a little brother and sister. I just don't think there's ever been I think what you're born to is what you will, the dedication and the hard work come from the passion first. And yeah, I mean, I suppose it's a bit like any relationship. You have to have a real desire first to be in it before you can, you know, do the hard work to make it work. And and it doesn't feel like hard work. I mean, I think you spend hours. You can speak to Susan. Anybody who loves the stage and age that they work with would spend hours in the classroom. You know, for a 2-hour session, I would spend another 4, you know, in the classroom, you know, trialing things, you know, changing trays that children dropped in the day. You know, wherever you go, you're looking for pieces of equipment. I still find myself, even though I'm not even in a classroom, you know, testing out jugs everywhere and, you know, thinking, oh, this would be a good jug. And, you know, so I think passion, ingredient, and I think the practical skills a Montessori educator has to have to really implement the principles. You have to be willing to get your hands dirty. You can't find under 3 equipment very easily. You know, you have to be willing to really ravage, you know, the secondhand shops, and be looking wherever you go, because it's chance findings to find a piece of equipment that a 0 to 3 child can really use with success on their own. Even the Montessori materials, I think also implementing Montessori at home, you've got to not have your classrooms with all Nienhuis equipment. You know, if you're working with 0 to 3, you want it to be transferable. Like there were things in my classroom that parents could set up easily at home, like using an ice tray as a sorting dish, you know, using things that they would find at home that they could go home and do what I did in the classroom, like a little spice jar cleaned off, with dowel sticks from the $2 store. So I made pieces of equipment for my classroom that the parents could go, I can do that.
Mm-hmm. And did you ever figure out the work-life balance?
Did I figure out? I think because I wasn't, I had the privilege of not being required to earn a certain amount of money. I never worked full time. And I never worked in the school holidays. So I think in that terms, probably more life balance than most educators who have to work full time would find, where when you're passionate, you would be working after hours. During term time, I focused on, I worked till my kids were coming home from school after in the classroom. So I think with the years that I ran the school, I think I did, probably caring for myself has always been hard. I don't think there's any mum that says that, getting that balance of self-care and what you're passionate about, that balance is pretty hard. Putting yourself first. It's one of my top tips I used to give parents: be kind to yourself, care for the carer, otherwise the carer won't be there to care for anybody else. But those two things combined are probably a challenge our whole life, especially if you're passionate about changing the world.
Yeah. Speaking of changing the world, what do you think are the biggest challenges faced by Montessori in Australia in general?
Well, unfortunately, it's still, as there's still so few children being given the opportunity to really have this approach from the beginning of their lives. I do think most of the work can be done in 0 to 6. I look at my 5 grandchildren who have only gone through Montessori in their first 6 years of life. My oldest granddaughter, I started my baby class when my first granddaughter was 8 months old. So she went through my baby class and then my toddler program, and then she went to Farmhouse Montessori 3 to 6, and then she's been in traditional education. She's in 2nd year. I just think what a child gains from the love of learning in 0 to 6, if it's part of their personality development, which 0 to 6 is the foundation of their personality, they're never going to lose that in no matter what environment they find themselves in. So I think the power of Montessori is, I think it would benefit if, sorry, fire alarm, cooking. When you get a husband to cook for you while you're whiskey.
We can't hear
the power of 0 to 3 is underestimated. As laying a foundation, an unconscious foundation in a child's life.
So why do you think so few why is Montessori still not more widely available after 115 or more years? Why is it taking so long?
Because it's seen as an alternative. It's seen as alternative because the principles haven't been, I think books like the Montessori Baby and the Montessori Toddler have made a huge inroad into parents seeing this and taking on board this, even if they don't put their children in a Montessori school. So it is changing that parents, but then still there's not enough mentoring, if you know what I mean. Like we all need somebody to walk alongside us.
Mm.
in ways that, in a different way of doing things.
Yeah.
And I
And
think
then I
the
guess,
mindset is still very much, especially in the 3 to 6, is that this is the child's environment, adults mustn't interfere. Whereas we have to get the families on board. You mentioned it earlier, Mark. I think parent education should be the biggest work Montessori schools do, because they're making decisions about what children get to do.
yeah. And once we change parents' minds through parent education, we need schools and centers to be able to send those children to. And if there's not a Montessori school or center near that parent, then that's it. What comes first, supply or demand?
What comes first?
Yeah. How do we change this?
Yeah. I mean, I think the foundation we have to change the adult's mind about how they see little tiny children. And that you can do wherever you, I mean, I think I speak to parents about that every single day. It doesn't matter where I'm at. And even if I'm not working or not consulting, it's wherever I go, I'm trying to change my church. And, everybody in my church, for 3 years, I've been putting Montessorian on Sunday mornings to try and get people to see little children differently, because of, especially technology is a huge hindrance in the 0 to 3 stage of that foundation of delayed gratification, of waiting, of doing things yourself with your hands, working with your hands. Unfortunately, we have to counteract that somehow.
And it's also an aspect of the traditional culture, particularly in traditional schools, that children need to be controlled. The whole ethos of traditional schooling is about control, right? And parents who grow up in that system, they then carry that over to their own parenting.
Well, you feel very uncomfortable. I mean, I just did a consult today where the mum says, but his dad says that there has to be an immediate consequence of him doing something wrong. So we feel very uncomfortable, that because it is the world is reward, punish, praise and reward. Praise is the biggest thing that, I have to encourage my child by giving them stars to go to the toilet. That it's quite interesting that parents are very resistant to a child can learn without that. And does learn better without that. I found 1,000 different ways of saying the same thing, because you have to say it in a lot of different ways. But when the light bulb goes on, you really do find things change for children, both at school and at home,
And it sounds like
lots of work to do.
Yeah, it sounds like the light bulb you found was having parents observe in a Montessori classroom. Once they see it in action for themselves, the light bulb goes off.
Or in their home environment. Like if I go, we will just wait for him to pull up his pants. And they said, but it's been 10 minutes. So I said, well, maybe it will have to take an hour. And I've waited 5. That's the longest I've waited.
Yeah.
And then the very next day it's 10 minutes, and the next day it's, you have to wait out a child's decision making, and most adults are not prepared to make or haven't got the time to wait. So That's the biggest thing.
Yeah. Does
I want to
anybody
make a difference in.
Yeah. Does anybody listening have
A question?
questions they'd like to ask?
Well, I like really what you said about the toddler and the age when the babies or the children or the teenagers stop to pee in the pants and the toilet training. Here in Thailand, we have the problem that sometimes 9-year-olds and 10-year-olds are walking around in Pampers. And that's no joke.
Mm.
Send their parents to me is all I can say.
So we would really need
Seriously,
it here.
I know it's an epidemic around the world.
Yeah, because it's much
that
easier to put on the
Parents think
Pampers
they're
and
doing their children psychological damage by saying no to them.
no,
And
here the children put on their Pampers by themselves.
yes, of course they do. But
Yeah.
who buys the Pampers?
You, the mother, and then actually the grandmother, because the mother don't has the money, and she said it's expensive, so she goes then and gives the child to the grandmother, and the grandmother has to take care and see how she can get through. So that's the way how it's working here.
Mhm.
I have also one here until 8. He was not clean because it was simply, yeah, they didn't want to get them clean.
Yeah, but and I've never worked more than 3 days with a child, whether they 2.5 or 7, because once you well, when you clean, you can leave the bathroom.
No, even when he was here, no problem. But when he was down in his house, no, please put on your Pampers. You cannot. You will pee in the bed and then whatever it is. Yeah. So
Yeah, and as I say, it's not a child problem.
no, absolutely not.
No.
It's a parent's problem.
And
yeah.
I do think that, yeah, yeah, as I say, I've had children not as old as 9 that I've worked with in Australia, but certainly 5 and 6-year-olds, and I've only visited via Zoom for 3 and I do it via Zoom.
Mm.
Body training by Zoom, yeah.
I get them out of nappies via Zoom.
Oh, good. So we need to distribute your
I've
number
honed
here.
my techniques, and I've even had toddlers closing the computer, opening the computer, closing the computer.
Yeah.
I say, I'm not going away and mommy's not coming in. So it's me or nothing.
Ferne, have you ever been on TV? Have you ever been interviewed on?
I'd love to get on TV. No, seriously, I do think that it is one of the foundational, the more I deal with toileting, the more I deal with it as one of the crises that will make parents do all the things they do with later crises. If you are in a standoff over a nappy, I tell you, a 15-year-old tantrum is, a lot harder to deal with. So, like the way our coping skills back then when they're little will translate into mishandling in other stages of their development. So we really do need to educate, I suppose, parents, like the book says, parents don't need more love, they need skills. And and educators don't need more love, they need skills. And that is my I suppose what drives me to do what I do is that I need to get more skilled. I mean, every child teaches me something that helps me to implement the principles better with another child. But the principles are so simple, they're profound. Like you can stick to the principles, and I have sat in a bathroom with a child running around saying, I want a nappy, I want a nappy, I want a nappy. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'm glad your mum's not in this room with me, because I'm like I'm feeling like I should give in my head. But, then I see suddenly the child grow up in 5 seconds when you don't give in to them. And so I just know that it works when you're very kind to them, but you're very firm with them.
Kind and firm at the same time.
Kind and firm at the same time, which doesn't feel right. It really doesn't feel right to have healthy boundaries. I mean, all of us who have been parents know that it doesn't feel right often to say no to the $5 or whatever to a child, but that the best gift that you can give your child is to say, I love you, but I won't let you, and I think if we learn that on the things like sleep, eating, and toileting are the 3 things that are so related in the first 3 years of life. Usually if a child is getting away with not pulling up their own pants, they're also getting away with asking the parent to feed them, or or sit beside them till 11 p.m. and hold their hand to go to sleep. So I attack all 3 of those things. I ask about development in all 3 of those things in order to resolve. And when you resolve one, you generally resolve all 3. So I think the power of the first few years of life is the biggest Montessori gift. Yeah, I think Maria Montessori would be thrilled that I've managed to, she didn't do that much work with 0 to 3, unfortunately, but I think the principles are so powerful. And I've seen them work over and over and over and over and over again, to make a huge difference, not only for the child, but for the parents. It like gives them a new lease on life when, getting parents on the same page. Thank you, COVID. I have to say thank you to COVID, because COVID enabled me to be talking to a mom and have a dad listening in, because he was working from home, and I do mostly couples consulting now.
Ferne, I think we need to find a way to get you on a morning talk show. You need to work on that. Well, thank you so much for your time.
The poo-poo guru goes to talk time.
Yeah.
My husband has not let. I want to put that on my car, but my husband will not let me.
Oh. Where can people find out more about the work you do?
They can. My website really needs a rehaul, so I would say email me. Well, you can go on my website, that I suppose gives a background to my whole under 3 work, and people can book into a discovery call, a complimentary discovery call, and I usually give enough tips for them to go away and at least see a huge difference in what they're dealing with. And then I do packages of hours depending on the situation. I've tried to make it, I've just got nothing can be resolved in 5 minutes with parenting, so I feel that parents just need some hand holding, whether it's sleep, eating, or toileting. But can I end on a lovely story?
Yes.
I was on a adult education program via Zoom with 250 people recently, a business development course, and this lady was working with the presenter on a problem solve, and I thought, this lady is so familiar, and her name was quite unique. It was Dutch and it was different, and I thought, I'm sure I had a parent with that name 20 years ago at Down Under 3. And so I just put in the chat, did by any chance you have a toddler at Down Under 3 20 years ago or whatever? And I got this message back, and she went, oh, Ferne, I can't tell you, you know what you used to do? I can't tell you how it has helped me as a parent. My son is 27. He's in Switzerland in the some special unit army or whatever. He's been so successful, and every time I think of it, I know that what you did in that classroom has helped me so much with my parenting. You used to just put your hand on my shoulder and say, just wait, he can solve his own problem.
Mm.
And she says,
Oh, that's wonderful.
your voice used to be in my head every time I tried to solve his problems for him all the way. And he didn't even go to Montessori the rest of his life. I do think the principles are powerful. And when I hear stories like that, and I have quite a few parents that I'm friends with that kids have left school now, and a dad phoned me just the other day for my birthday from Sydney, and he said, oh, Fern, I saw that was your birthday. And he said, I still use, what would Fern do in this situation?
Fern, I think we need a series of billboards around the country with your face on it and the caption, just wait, they can solve their own problem.
Just solve their own problems, yeah. Anyway,
well,
I hope we didn't go too much off track, Mark, me and parenting. But I do think the work is on the parenting side.
Yeah. All right. Well, good night. And thank you for coming, everybody. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.